That came out of my first week in Chicago. In 1982, I moved to Chicago for 3 weeks to take these classes at Players Workshop. And I'm a giant sports fan. And yeah, I took an instant liking to Chicago, but I really wanted to see Wrigley Field and Comiskey Park because they were two of the last beautiful old ballparks left. I went to Comiskey Park, and that's where I really encountered a lot of Southsiders who had this outfit on that seemed like almost a uniform. And they would wear a really garish t-shirt that had a big, ugly White Sox or Bears logo on it, and they wore these shades, the aviator shades that were not in style anymore at that time, gold aviators, and they would wear a Cubs or a Sox or a Bears hat. And a lot of them had these weird Oxford shirts that they would wear under the t-shirt. And they were all overweight, and they all had Mike Ditka walrus mustaches that were like a badge of virility. And, maybe the shades were echoes of the Blues Brothers in their mind, because that was the greatest movie in the history of cinema, my friend. And I just couldn't believe that so many guys dressed like this. And they just had this weird swagger about them, even though their teams were still pretty shitty. And just in my head, I just imagined that Bears. That's it. It's going to happen. You see, my friend. Look out, New York. That Bears. I told Odenkirk about it, and he said, make it the Bears. Just to add the little s. It was some sort of little Polish touch that he had picked up on he grew up in Naperville. So I added the little touch and never thought of performing it anywhere on Saturday Night Live because it just seemed like an inside joke. We did it during the writer's strike. Right. Happy, good show. It was just me, Odenkirk, and Dave Reynolds. And we're just sitting around in lounge chairs. And we're just having a conversation, and the conversation would always end in whatever we're talking about. It would always end. But I can tell you one thing that's certain, my friend. Come January, a certain theme from a certain blah 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 blah. The bear, and then we would lift our mugs and drink, and that was it. It was just a weird conversation, but it was a huge hit in Chicago. Joe Mantegna hosted the show in January of '91. And Odenkirk's like, Robert, we got to try it. Come on. I'm like, we didn't even do it in L.A., Bob. And I know, but it's just, come on. We got to figure this out. And he came up with, let's make it a show, he said. There was a show in Chicago called The Sports Writers on TV. And it was just these four sports writers who would just sit around the table and argue. And he said, make it like that. Let's make it like that, except it's these guys. And then I said, oh, okay, and maybe they can make idiotic predictions. Like that wasn't even in the Happy Good Show sketch where it's like, Bears 64-3. And then I knew we had a sketch. The reason it became a hit was because in Chicago, Jonathan Brandmeier and other disc jockeys started playing clips from the sketch over and over. And the Bears became this gigantic catchphrase. And I hadn't even written it as duh in the sketch. I had written THE. But suddenly there were signs, and then the Bulls got good. Right. And they're starting to call them the Bulls. And then George Wendt hosts the last show of the year. And now Bob and I are like, yeah, we're going to write another one. And we wrote it for George. As his brother Bob Swirsky, because Bill is out with a heart attack, and that sketch did great. And then the Bulls won the championship. It was kismet, my friend.